Good morning, subscribers, and today we are looking at GCSE economics once again, the stimulus material. A number of people are messaging me at the moment asking for me to maybe try and get through this a little bit quicker, but I'll try and do just a couple of figures a week. That really is the limit of what I can do given everything else that's going on at the moment. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are considering figures 3 and 4. So we're considering China's exports and imports of goods, and we've got rank order tables here for China, and then when we flick to the next set of data, something very similar, but this time it is for India. Okay, now let's cut to the chase, ladies and gentlemen. What do we think, what does Geekonomics think might be some of the likely questions to appear on this particular set of data, figures 3 and 4. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. These are just a few things which you might wish to prepare by way of sample question material for the forthcoming exam. So number 1, to define the term export. Not even going to, I won't insult your intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, by going into that one with you. And then we've got a few here with regard to calculate percentage changes. So calculate the percentage change in China's export of goods to the USA, to Hong Kong, to Japan, to South Korea. Now the reason I include this is, number 1, because of course you all ought to be able to calculate a simple percentage change. And yet it is a skill which is often very badly done on exam papers. So let's just have a look at one, and then I'll leave you to work your way through and just practice and get into the way of doing the others. So let's bring our data set up. Let's bring our annotation set up. Okay, so for example, let's say that we wanted to calculate the percentage change in the volume of exports, or indeed the value of exports in this instance, going to the United States between 2000 and 2014. How much is it, as you can see, increased? Now the first thing to say here, ladies and gentlemen, is do nota bene that this is in millions of dollars. So this is 52,000 million. Now think about what that number is. So it's 52,162. And then million, so there are obviously 6 zeros on a million, so we need to go 000, comma 000. So that actually would end up with, so we've got 369. So another way of saying 52,000 million is of course 52 billion. So that's an important point just in terms of your understanding of these numbers, I think. However, the fact that it's in millions here makes it easier for us to calculate percentage change. So what would the calculation be for the United States? Well, we would have to do 397,099, which is of course this number, minus 52,162. So that would obviously get us the increase from 52 to 397. And then we would be dividing that by the original number, which is 52,162, because we're trying to work out how many times greater is it than 162. So then 52,162, and then we're multiplying by 100, and that will put that into a percentage for you. So, of course in the exam, it is not the case that you will get, ladies and gentlemen, it is not the case that you will be asked to do all of these calculations for all of these countries, but just do it just to get into the way of working out these percentage changes. Okay, which of the BRIC nations does not make China's top 10 exports in 2014? If memory serves, I think it's Russia, is it? So who have we got here? Who have we got? Who have we got? So we've got India. We've got Russia. Have we got Brazil? No. Have we got China? No. So there is our answer, ladies and gentlemen. Identify the 4 components of the current account. I looked at that in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into that. using calculations, compare China's 2014 trade in goods balance. So trade in the goods balance, actually asking you to calculate the goods balance. Now, how would we do that, ladies and gentlemen? So let's flick back in here. 2014, China's trade in goods balance to the United States. So this is then a question of calculating the difference, so the net difference between the value of exports and the value of imports. So we can see that China exports 397,000 million or 397 billion in 2014 to the United States and imports 154. So we can clearly see that that is running a trade surplus because the value of X is greater than the value of M. And obviously to calculate the actual trade in goods balance for the United States, we would be doing, what would we be doing? We would be doing 397099, and then we would want to go minus 154136. And of course, whatever your answer there, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget it's dollars, it's in millions, and it's obviously in thousands of million here, so that we're talking about billions of we've talked about. Now again, this is just a little exercise for you to do by way of practice to get into the way of calculating goods balances. So the next part of the question, which you will see, asks you to do the same thing. So you could at least do the same thing for India, and you could work out something similar. Now this word compare is a directive word, compare, very important word, and do work on comparing data. So when you compare data, make sure that you include in your answer phrases such as higher than, greater than, lower than or less than, is equivalent to, fluctuates more, increases at a faster rate. All of these types of comparative statements when you see the word compare. Do not under any circumstances just say China's value is this and India's value is that and leave it at that. Compare questions require you to use comparative statements in your answer. And generally speaking, they're very badly done, these types of questions, both at GCSE and A level. Hence the reason I've scattered them amongst these questions so that you can get more practice at this. In 2014, China ran a deficit. 2 possible causes of a trade deficit. Well, we've covered that in the previous video, so I'm not going to look into that. Compare the value of exports. Again, this is just to get you practising comparing data. So I'm not going to go into that one either. And then this last question, evaluate the potential impact of China and India on patterns of world trade. Now, there is a whole chapter in the OCR textbook on this about, and it's indeed, I think the actual chapter title is called something like China and India Impact on World Trade. Now, I would be extremely surprised, ladies and gentlemen, dumbfounded, flabbergasted indeed, if, given that we've got data here on China and we've got data subsequently here on India, I would be absolutely astounded if this question does not appear on your exam paper. And let me just bring the specification up here to just show you why I would be astounded if it does not appear. So this is the Unit 3 section of the spec, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. As you roam through the spec, as you peruse it, try and look for references to India and China. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Look, evaluate the potential impact of China and India on patterns of world trade. So that, as I say, I'll be amazed if this is not the question. And given that you've got some data on the stimulus material, when answering that question, you would obviously be encouraged, and I'll certainly be doing this with my students this week because this is exactly the set of data we've been looking at. I've been encouraging them not only to consider what the actual impact is of China and India on world trade. So obviously you'll be talking about things like an enormous market given that the population sizes of these countries. We talked about the fact that oftentimes it's referred to that the Chinese economy is sort of the impersonator, so it's great at copying things, whereas the Indian economy, most people would argue that in the longer term might see more sustainable long-run growth, because rather than simply being an impersonator, it is an innovator. And there are lots of innovative ideas coming out of India at the moment. There's obviously the potential of cheap labour, there's the potential to move multinational companies there, and so on and so forth. This is all in the chapter in the textbook, so I don't just want to sort of waste the time here going through what's in your textbook. But this keyword, evaluate, this would suggest to us, ladies and gentlemen, not only will you be asked about this data, but you'll be asked to evaluate it. So now remember, evaluate means a two-sided discussion, and at some later point I will go through the geekonomic structure for answering an evaluate question, which will enable you 10 times out of 10 to access all of the higher level mark bands. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll be back next week with the next figures. Bye for now. Obviously, if you've any messages, any requests, do put them to me, because I am ramping up the old video productions at the moment to try and meet the demand, the supply meeting the demand, ladies and gentlemen. So bye for now.